Hello and welcome to the agenda here on Politics Social. I am Graham Hughes and I'm joined, as always, on this show by Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias fame. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm all right.
How's your week been in general? Has it been frustrating? Has it been infuriating?
It's just the same as what it is all the time.
Just a non-stop cavalcade of calamity.
Yes.
Yes. So just before we get started, just a big shout out to Katrina and Diz and Brett in the chat, as well as Liam and Gallifrey and Ren. And also Sonic Shadow, One Angry Pagan is in there, and others, Vendetta 9000. Hello! If you'd like to join our friends in the chat, just hit the subscribe button. But be polite, be respectful, be woke, or we will dismiss you. We won't be woke. We'll just send you off to sit on the naughty step and think about what you've done. Right. So Phil, today we're going to be talking about Blue Labour, just to make a change. Yeah. Well, I've been talking a little bit about how Labour seems to be skewing to the right, and one of the reasons why
they're not skewing to the right
because of. Let's get into
I mean, we've gone through this every week. Should we be clear? They're not skewing to the right. They're skewing towards social conservatism quite heavily, but that's not the right.
Okay, I'll say conservatism then.
The right is selling off public services and lowering taxes. That's the right.
Okay.
Labour are doing neither of those things.
So is Brexit left-wing then?
Brexit's not left-wing now.
Well, then there you go. They supported Brexit. The support of getting rid of all the workers' rights, my right to go and live and work anywhere in Europe.
Brexit's not a right-wing thing either. It's neither left nor right.
Well, if you're going to say they protect workers' rights.
Left-wing is large state, right-wing is small state. How is Brexit either of those things?
Because Brexit is, I mean, left and right is more than that, isn't it? Surely. No. And Brexit means, we're making our states smaller, right?
It's really simple. The left-wing, the extreme left-wing is communism, where the state owns everything and controls all means of production. The extreme right-wing is the state owns nothing, literally nothing. It has a police force and an army. That's it.
I think that's a very simplistic view of.
It's not simplistic.
Right,
that's the definition. No,
well,
that's the definition.
How come Trump has just demanded 10% of Intel in America?
Because he's a crook. He's not. He's not.
But that seems to be communist to me.
It is. Quite a lot of his things are, because he's not left or right wing himself. I mean, he spent most of his pre-political life saying people should vote for the Democrats.
He did indeed.
Purely because that is what he felt benefited him, because they were better with the economy.
If you don't like me using the term right wing to
say
describe social conservatism,
that's what it is, though.
But for most people, be accurate. I think that is accurate. I think people who are socially conservative are right wing.
They're not right wing. There's incredibly liberal people on the right wing.
There's incredibly liberal people that want social conservatism, anti-liberalism, anti-individualism.
Because that's why you don't talk about. There's no political spectrum. It's a complete misnomer. Some people talk about the political compass, which is more accurate, because you've got economic policy and you've got social policy.
Okay, so we're northwest on the political compass. Where are we?
So basically, imagine up would be socially conservative, down would be socially liberal, left would be state control of production, right would be private market production. So where you actually have, and this is why Blue Labour are rising to prominence. They shouldn't have as much sway as they do, but this is why they're rising to prominence. So first of all, you've had for some time people who are like authoritarian right wing. The Conservatives, although they are a mix themselves, mostly cater to that group. You have people who are liberal right wing. The Conservatives and the Lib Dems have traditionally fought over those people. You have people who are left wing and liberal, and traditionally, Labour, the Green Party, SNP, Plaid, have been in there. But then you've got the top left, which is left-wing and conservative. And Labour have always dipped into that a little bit, usually with some things like, law and order policies mostly. But mostly, those people had a choice between either prioritising their social beliefs, in which case they voted Conservative, or prioritising their economic beliefs, in which case they voted Labour. But along comes Reform UK, and they claim to be clearly, openly socially conservative, but also for left-wingers. So they camp, and we know they're not left-wing. We know what they would actually do in government isn't left-wing, but what they say they will do is, so they've pitched their tent on that top left where there's a shitload of voters. So Labour now have to think, hang on a minute, we can't just get them to choose between economic and social, because most people will pick economic policy. Now, those people have been told they can have their cake and eat it. They can have their economic and social policies all rolled into Reform UK.
Right.
So that is what has led to the emergence of Blue Labour.
Well, no,
where
Blue
the
Labour
problem
started in 2009. I mean, the Blue Labour faction just
but
started this year
they've never held
officially.
sway. They've never held sway, right? But the reason why they do now, the problem is, what Labour are not doing is going, okay, yes, okay, we are going to have to lean into this a little bit more for those voters, but they're not being strategic about it because they're not polling. They're not finding out what people believe and how it's going to affect their voting. It's like the saliency thing they're not looking at all. And again, the proof of that, although people will say to me, oh, you don't know what they're doing behind closed doors. No, I don't. But I do know that the winter fuel allowance debacle was a thing. And that can only have been caused by not actually having their finger on the pulse of the public. Because literally, you couldn't have made that mistake if you were polling them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just to get away with the reaction of why they exist, I was trying to get first of all like who they are and what they, how they started.
They are that top left.
Maurice Glasman.
That's what they
Maurice
are.
Glasman,
they're the top left.
Who is, wasn't he invited to Trump's inauguration? And he's got a good friendship going with JD Vance. I mean, this is a guy who was very vocally against staying in the EU and all of the workers' rights that would lose as a result of that. He was obviously all in favour of that. And he sounds like someone who is in Labour, who is trying to destroy Labour from within.
No, you say that. They think that they're right. Just like if you were in charge, so what you're saying, what you've been saying consistently for weeks, if you were in charge, you would bin all of their policies and you might send Labour to historic defeat and they would think you were incredibly dangerous for Labour.
I wouldn't try and change Labour into a party that most people don't recognise as the party they voted for.
No, right. Let's just be really clear here. At the moment, the current political situation is this. Public's opinion is increasingly against liberal policies, right? Now, there's certain issues where it's not got that much salience at the moment, so Labour shouldn't be leaning into it. But nonetheless, those are the views that people have. Now, if you want to change these policies, there's two ways you can go about it. You can either tell comforting lies to people, and you can go, oh, this is terrible, do the old, Novara media stuff, or you can say, what we want to do is to try and change it. Now, if you want to change it, what you've got to do is try to persuade people, ordinary people. And there's a danger that by saying, well, these people are, by saying things like they want to destroy Labour, when actually no, because what you're saying is you're doing the usual extremist thing of not accepting that people can have a different point of view. And the problem with that is therefore... No, that's what extremists do.
You talk often about people in a party having different views from the leadership and being rebels and saying, well, you shouldn't be in the party then. Go and join the party.
No, I never said
better with your beliefs.
When have I said that?
You've said if you're an MP and it's a 3-line whip, you should vote with the party because that's the party that you were elected on the ticket of.
That's discipline. I'm not saying they should be kicked out of the party. I'm saying the only way a government can function is if it's united. You have to at least vote with the government.
If I, as a Labour member, say that I voted for the Lib Dems in the last election, I can be thrown out.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I can.
No, it's not.
That's what happened. That's what happened to Alistair Campbell.
I know, but that wasn't because of the rules. They just wanted to kick him out. It was just an excuse. It was a Trump type excuse.
Well, they kicked me out.
It's like Trump saying Lisa Pick.
Yeah,
well, they didn't kick him out because he was never in there. They just declined his application.
But the
Labour rules do not say you can't come out and say you voted for Lib Dem. They say you can't do it ahead of the vote, but you can do it afterwards.
Okay.
Because you can't promote another party.
I don't understand
which is sensible. Why would you be in a party and promote another party anyway? That's
exactly.
quite right to be kicked out for that.
But what
So
I
that's a
think these
separate
guys
issue.
are doing is promoting refuck and the Tories.
they're not.
Because
They're not. They're
socially conservative. If you don't
No.
even, if you don't like me using the words right wing, which I think
Because it's wrong.
covers them.
It's factually wrong. Be accurate.
Why?
Why not be accurate?
Well, okay, why is it? I still don't understand why it's not right. You're
You
saying,
do understand
well, there's
the difference between social
there's
policy and
different
economic policy.
overall, right? There's all these different policies, right? Some of them are a bit
they're
left wing,
all either-
some of them
no.
are a bit right wing. They're all different policies. If the majority
They're
of
either
the things that you
economic or
want to
social.
do are seen by society as right wing, you're a right winger. It's as simple
No.
as that.
No.
You might be centre right,
There's-
but you're still
no,
right.
No. If you're right or left, that's about economic policy, not social policy.
Could it only
Nothing
be
to do
about
with social
economic policy?
Yes.
So this
That's
obsession,
literally the definition.
with
That's like the people who defined this, that is literally how they framed it.
people who are obsessed with immigration, faith, nationalism, culture war bullshit.
You're
you wouldn't
basically
call
saying,
them right wing on a technical
Graham,
on a technical,
It's not technical.
ambiguity here, where you say, well,
Graham,
actually, right wing and
you're
left wing is
trying to
only
argue.
talking about
You're trying to argue communists are right wing.
what? How?
You're
What?
trying to argue communists are right wing.
Well, actually, when you mention it, yeah, I mean, there is an overlap of
No, that's
totalitarianism, whether it's
because
fascist
that's
or,
social.
or
because
or
that's
communist.
social policy. So you can be communist authoritarian, but you can't be communist right wing.
Okay. On these topics,
That's why you're going
on
wrong,
these topics.
because,
No.
go on.
Look, what I'm saying. You're saying is that you're only going to accept a narrow definition of left wing and right wing based on.
No, I'm going to accept the accurate definition.
Based on
accurate
the
definition.
economy, based on economic.
Because that is what it means. Everything else is
opinion.
socially conservative or liberal. That's literally the
So
definition.
you can't use right wing to describe people who are running around painting flags on things because it's got nothing to do with the economy.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, let's start again. I won't use the term right wing.
Although
I'll
you
just
can
say
do that if you're
socially
liberal as well.
conservative.
You
Okay.
can do that if you're liberal.
What?
A liberal person might want to paint something on the road. They often don't,
okay.
but they might want to. So that's not conservative either.
But it's the George Voss
it's
in
conservatives
Wales
doing it.
That sounds like nationalists to me.
It
And that
is
sounds
nationalist,
right-wing to
yeah.
me.
It is, but you could also have someone liberal doing the same thing.
All right,
Someone just told me in my stream earlier.
we're getting bogged down in definitions here. Let's just say socially conservative. There's a group of people in the Labour Party who are socially
and
conservative.
they always were.
The clue is in the Conservative in there. There is another
yeah.
party called the Conservatives.
Yes.
What are they doing in Labour? Are they helping?
Because Labour have always been that. You have this image that Labour have always been a liberal party. They've never been a liberal party. They had once a liberal leadership.
When was that?
One time in their entire history.
When was
and that
that?
was Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
So
That was it.
when they created the NHS, that wasn't them being liberal.
No, that's economic policy.
Okay, when they got rid of
That
the
was to
death
benefit
penalty they got rid of the death penalty, full stop, but also they stopped
was that the
it
same
being
time-
illegal to be gay.
Was that the same time as the Empire Act?
That was
Yes, it
1967.
was. Yeah, that it was. That's Edward Heath, who also instigated incredibly racist legislation.
Okay. But at the time, it was still legal for anyone in the Commonwealth to come here with no questions asked on their Commonwealth passport until 1973
passports.
when we shifted over to Europe instead.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But Labour have never been
there
liberal.
was I can point at socially progressive stuff that Labour did in the past, and it's always been
but they
more
also did
socially
socially
progressive.
regressive stuff.
But it's
at the same
always
time.
been more socially progressive than the others, which has always been the Tories, or sometimes the Tories and the Lib Dems getting into bed
Yes.
together, ill-advisedly.
Because the reason the Conservatives are called the Conservatives is because they are not defined by, or they weren't defined by their economic policies. You've got to remember the Conservatives at the time you're talking about had policies to tax the rich 95%.
Yeah, great days.
So, but nonetheless, what I'm trying to explain to you is the history. I mean, you should know the history of it. They weren't defined by, they are now defined by their economic policies. That was since Thatcher. Before Thatcher, they were not defined by economic
So
policy.
how did we use
They were
left-wing and
defined by
right-wing before
social
then?
policy. Because they were still more right-wing than Labour. But they also, because they, for example, they opposed the creation of the NHS. So they acted as like
That's
a
got nothing to do
brake
with the economy.
against it.
Would you say that was right-wing to oppose the creation of the NHS?
Well, because it would cost taxes from their point of view.
So it wasn't
Because
economic.
I said it was economic at the start. That's what I said. You
Well,
were
here's
the
the
one trying
thing,
to argue
like,
it was a social policy.
yeah, but now I can't call anyone who's conservative and voted for Brexit a right-winger.
Well,
because
they might still be right
because they obviously hate our economy and want it to fail. So if you look
they
at it,
didn't. They didn't want it to fail. They thought it would be better for the economy. Again, you're right. I have to come back to this point. You must let me finish it.
Okay.
There are people who say you're expressing a different view to the one I hold, therefore you are lying. That is an extremist point of view. Now, you can get away strategically with that point of view if you have control of the media and you can push that message on everyone else. But you don't. You're in the minority and you're losing. We're both losing, right? We are losing.
That means we just spent 20 minutes debating on what left-wing and right-wing means, when I'm talking about what it means.
These are facts.
As someone with a politics degree who can go out with a microphone now and interview someone in the streets and say, is putting up a flag everywhere, is that a bit right-wing? Yeah.
So you're saying
if it's a Union Jack, if it's an EU flag, that might be seen as left-wing, although you do have Lexiters, so it's messy.
So you're saying because people are wrong, we should just...
No. I'm not saying
we
they're
should
wrong.
be led by the ignorant.
I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that I would define
they are wrong.
Their worldview as being right-wing on social issues.
So you're saying...
you won't let me use right-wing, so let's say socially conservative.
So are you saying we should go along with majority public opinion on these things?
No, I didn't even mention that. I'm talking about the definition of what is right-wing and left-wing. I'm saying there's most people in this country see Labour as being left-wing, centre-left, perhaps.
They are
if you're
left-wing.
a rabid Corbynite, you'll say they were the Nazis. But for most people, they're seen as left-wing. For most people, the Tories are seen as right-wing.
They are right-wing.
But if they only became left-wing and right-wing a few years ago,
they didn't only become left-wing and right-wing a few years ago. Labour have always been left-wing. The Conservatives, by their own definition, only become right-wing in those terms recently. But there's been other times when they were more right-wing and sometimes left. Literally, left and right
less right-wing, I would say.
Left and right is about what the state does. There was a time when the Conservative government, under Macmillan, for example, used to build shitloads of houses. Well, that's the state building shitloads of houses. That is left-wing. So they have checked, because the Conservatives, just like Labour, have never been defined by social policy. They swing one way or the other according to where they think they need to strategically. So the Conservatives, their main thing is social issues. Their economic policies change according to... They'll never be as left-wing as Labour because Labour are firmly camped in that left wing. They always want more and stronger public services, whereas the Conservatives are about equilibrium. They're more like the Lib Dems in terms of economic policy. They're quite similar, or traditionally they've been quite similar, in that there's an equilibrium. So if they think that the state is too big, they want to pare it down like David Cameron did. If they think it's not big enough, then they want to increase it like Macmillan did. It's the same Conservative Party.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm not arguing about that. What I'm trying to say is, I started off by saying these are people who are in the Labour Party who I see as right-wing on social issues.
There's
No such
thing as right-wing.
But then you said, I can't call them that. Okay, I'll call them socially conservative. Well, here's the thing. The abolition of the death penalty, for instance, is that left-wing or right-wing?
It's neither. It's not an economic policy. You can look at it as left-wing because when they get out of jail, they can do some work, grow the economy. But you can look at it as right-wing because, while they're in jail...
It costs a lot less money.
You're costing money.
Yeah, no, if you kill someone, it costs money.
But the reason to execute someone or the reason not to execute someone has got nothing to do with the economy, economic figures. It's entirely to do with social policy.
Yes, so that's something that can be seen by the eye of the beholder.
It can be left or right.
It can be left or right. But there you go. You just said it yourself.
Stalin was very keen on it.
Yep.
Stalin was very keen on it. So was Hitler, right?
Yeah.
Left and right.
Yeah.
It's not a left or right issue.
This is one of the issues, one of the problems, fundamental problems, which is kind of separate to what we're talking about how do we define the political spectrum? Because obviously because
there isn't a political spectrum. If you define it as it actually is, it's not a nuanced thing. It's actually really simple. As soon as you realise it's not a spectrum, it's a two-dimensional grid. Everything is social or economic. And social goes on one axis, economic goes on another.
But surely there's gradients along that.
No, give me an example.
Is it one or the other?
Yeah, give me an example.
So if the Tories give more money to doctors, is that a left wing or a right wing?
That's them moving to the left. Yeah.
But that's like totally left? I would say that was a bit
Not
to the
totally,
left.
no.
Because it's only helping people
you're
who
talking
are
about
already
on
probably
one
rich.
axis. Yes, of course you have different positions along one axis.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I didn't say it's, but no, but that's not what you're saying. What you're trying to say is surely there are some policies that can be,
Seen as left or right
aren't
wing.
either social or economic. So give me an example of policy that I cannot categorize as either fundamentally social or economic.
So, the death penalty.
I've just gone through that social.
But it's also
Really
economic.
social.
It costs a lot of money to kill someone. You can make a very strong economic argument against the death penalty. In fact, that's why some countries wound it up. It was costing too much. It was a lot cheaper to keep someone in jail for the rest of their life than to try and kill them.
But you can do the opposite. You can do the opposite. You can make the opposite economic argument. If you kill someone, they're no longer available for labour.
Yes.
So you can make a left wing or a right wing argument.
Yeah, and you can make a left wing argument for killing people, I'm sure.
Well, I've just given you it. I've literally given you the left wing argument for killing people. Like,
this is my point.
Literally, if there's a policy that both Stalin and Hitler agreed with, it's clearly not an economic policy because they're at polar opposites.
Yes. So not everything can be defined through the economic or social
policy. No, everything can. That is a social policy.
So that's a social policy which you won't put on a right or left spectrum.
Because it doesn't fit. Because if you want to make an economic argument, you can make it both ways. You say it was cheaper to keep someone in jail for the rest of their life than to kill them, but that's a nonsense. Because it's cheaper to kill someone, because once you've killed them, that's it.
No, but you've got to pay for the court cases. It takes 10 years to kill someone in California.
It
costs millions of dollars. Yeah, because they're not working, so they get a free brief. They get an attorney paid for by the state, and they put an appeal and an appeal after appeal, even if they're guilty, because they don't want to die.
Only if your law allows them to. You don't have to.
No, but that's the way most liberal democracies are set up. That's why most liberal democracies don't have a death penalty.
Liberal democracies, so social. Liberal democracies don't execute.
It might be, but I'm just saying that there's a social argument for and against the death penalty, and there's an economic argument for and against the death penalty.
There's no.
So where do we put it on your two-dimensional grid?
It's social. It's purely social.
Where do you put it on your
liberal policy?
On your two-dimensional grid, where's the X?
It goes on the socially conservative side.
Socially conservative, the abolition of the death penalty.
And that's on the liberal side.
But then you can make a socially conservative argument for it.
No, because liberalism is about people's freedoms. Freeing them from life is not what people mean when they say they're liberal.
Yeah. But I mean, socially conservative people say, well, I don't want to pay for it. Or what if it's me?
Socially conservative people, again, not everyone is in favour of the death penalty, but if you are in favour of the death penalty, you are socially conservative by definition.
I've got a first super chat in. Thank you very much from David Faulkner for the 78 Hong Kong dollars. I know that if you provide lefty affordable housing, close to work, accessible medicine, public education and transportation, social services and happy, contented communities, it's a real good for righty businesses. Yeah, I agree, but we'll have to stop using the term left and right because, Phil, you're not happy with me using that term. So can I just say socially conservative?
I'll tell you why it's a particular problem beyond the fact that it's just wrong. Because it is allowing you to make a straw man argument that there are people in Labour who shouldn't be in Labour based on their social policies when Labour has never been defined by social policies. So you are trying to lump two people together.
Are you saying no one has ever defined Labour by its social policies? Because I'm pretty sure they have. I'm pretty sure if you go out there and ask people in the street,
then they're wrong.
Give them a particular policy and say, is this more likely to be Labour? A social policy, and say, is this more likely to be Labour or the Tories?
Are these they will make a guess. Who could not name me 10 Labour policies?
Yes, possibly.
Right, then. I don't know anything about Labour.
I'm saying, generally speaking, the voters who vote for either left, what they see, and you might disagree with their definition as a left wing or the right wing.
No, it's not a case of their definition. You're now making another assumption that everyone votes based on their economic views. What I've just literally said to you is that not everyone does.
I didn't say that.
But you've just said that.
I said that people's definition that they use for left and right wing, if you just go out into the streets and talk to people, they will say this particular social policy is left wing, or this particular social policy is right wing. They won't even think about the economy side of it.
But when they're thinking in the ballot box, They're not thinking left and right. They're thinking which party they think.
That doesn't matter.
It does matter.
I'm talking about just the definition, like the generally accepted definition of what is right and left. But look, let's leave that to one side, and I'll just say socially conservative.
You are trying to argue that Labour, because you are left-wing liberal, that Labour should be entirely aligned with you. No. And we should completely ignore the voters that Reform UK are winning over.
No, I think that Labour aren't aligned with me on a lot of things.
Let's just be clear then. What do you
think a lot of economic things as well.
Social policy. Pardon? What do you think Labour should do in terms of social policy?
I think we should join the social policy. I think they should stop demonising trans people. I think they should look after the disabled. I think they should be helping people rather than putting the fear of God in them. I don't think they should have MPs saying we should leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
Do you know why that is?
Because of
why Labour MPs shouldn't say that.
Say Blue Labour.
Why Labour? No. Why shouldn't Labour say we should leave the ECHR?
Because it's going to be bad for workers' rights. Same reason why no Lexiteer and the L stood for left wing should have supported Brexit.
Why? No. Why shouldn't? Why is it bad for workers' rights to leave the ECHR?
Because there's workers' rights that are covered by the by the ECHR, and if we get a tribunal against me for being ginger or something mad, I can take it to the next stage above the Supreme Court, which we know is already having problems with its possible corruption in terms of the way they're choosing to interpret the Equalities Act of 2010.
No, it's more fundamental than that. The European Convention on Human Rights is what gives us the right to join a trade union. Now, we were in trade unions before we joined the ECHR, and there are countries that aren't in the ECHR that also have trade unions. But if we ever got a government that was so minded to massively restrict the functioning of trade unions or even make them illegal in certain cases to begin with, there would be nothing stopping them doing so. But it's got nothing to do with the many of the. It's literally two. There are two provisions in the European Convention on Human Rights, which means that no Labour MP should ever support the idea of leaving. But that is it. I do not say that Labour cannot have socially conservative policy, because literally it's been the case throughout Labour's history. Literally a half of Labour have always been socially conservative, and half of Labour have always agreed with the Conservatives on social policy. The reason why Labour emerged, remember the very first Labour government, what happened to it?
The one in the 30s.
Straight away. I mean, immediately. Yeah, what happened to it after it won power? What happened to it after it lost power?
It just dissolved into a mess.
No.
What?
No. Most of it joined the Conservatives.
Yeah.
The very first Labour Prime Minister, a few years later, was a Conservative, right? Because Labour have never, ever in its entire history been clearly liberal or social conservative. They've always been split between the middle. The reason the Labour Party emerged in the first place is because neither the Liberal Party nor the Conservative Party were ever going to give workers a fair deal. They were literally being killed. Yeah. So it was to save the lives and improve the living standards of workers. That is what unites Labour, and that is why I do not say you should kick people out of Labour for having socially conservative policies, but at the point at which you want to weaken the laws that allow for trade unions, that is why. And that's got nothing to do with Brexit. I don't say you can't believe in Brexit and be in Labour. I can say you're a bit stupid, weren't you, mate? But that's not a reason to kick someone out of Labour. But the ECHR, I'm not saying they should be kicked out of Labour, but I would say to them, why are you supporting a move that would weaken people's right to join a trade union?
Okay.
That's what it would do.
What about the rights that we lost when we left the EU?
Yeah,
such as firing rehire. We had a famous case where I think it was P&O Ferries, wasn't it? Sacked all of the British workers and rehired them the next day with people from other countries.
Yeah, but
something that they couldn't have done if we had stayed in the EU.
No, but also Labour can put those back, so you won't win that argument with the Brexiteer because they're saying, well, Labour are putting those in place. The fact that Nigel Farage wants to cancel it again when he becomes Prime Minister.
Yes. Well, for Nigel Farage is going to absolutely wreck the place.
But that's why Labour should lean into that more. They should lean into where there's a difference. They should be leaning into the fact that Farage is against workers' rights. Farage, in fact, do you know what? I mean, the latest, but like Farage is out of kilter with his own voters on workers' rights, renters' rights, housing, building more houses, the funding model for the NHS. There's quite a few things, energy, net zero, but there's now a new one. There's a new one now this week, because YouGov did some polling after Reform UK announced their policy this week. And would you believe it, even Reform UK voters, by and large, don't think it's a good idea to give taxpayer money to the Taliban.
Yeah, it's funny that.
So Labour
isn't it?
should be leaning into all that as well.
Yeah, they should be doing a lot of things that they're not doing, Phil. One Angry Pagan, I think we should. Thank you very much for the super chat. I think we need the political compass on screen. Lol. We could bring it up for you if you want. You know, I am aware of its existence. That wasn't my point. But you know, the argument came down to, I believe that you can point to the social policy and say, well, that's a bit left wing or that's a bit right wing.
But it's only
well, Phil doesn't like me doing that because he wants it
to
just be based on the economy. So I'm trying not to use the term left wing.
Yeah, but the reason, Graham,
when talking about policy,
your premise, the very first premise you came out with, and you've been pushing it, is the idea that you can say someone shouldn't be in Labour because they're socially conservative because you want to call it right wing, and Labour aren't right wing. So you're trying to that's a straw man argument. You're trying to misrepresent someone in order to like trash their argument without engaging with them.
So whether I say call them socially conservative, because in my head, right, and at the head of a lot of voters, I think socially conservative and right wing go hand in hand. But if you don't want me to use that definition, fine, I'll just say socially conservative.
Vote Labour. There's loads of socially conservative
there
people
might
vote
be,
Labour.
There might be, but Labour have been seen in my lifetime. In my lifetime, because don't forget, I was born in the year that Thatcher got into power. They've been seen as the socially progressive alternative to the Tories. Because and when they were in for 13 years, between 97 and 2010, they were incredibly socially progressive compared with the Tories. Yeah. But they didn't renationalise the trains. They didn't do a bunch of stuff that they should have done at the time. They didn't bring in, things that I think they should have done. But they didn't do it. That's fine.
But you know why that was? Because they were so. First of all, Tony Blair. I don't think
there was any political appetite for it.
No, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were very socially conservative people, but they were also centrist. But also, at the time, strategically, there was no push for them to lean into social conservatism either. So they were naturally aligned with social liberalism. And there was because the country was becoming more liberal anyway. I mean, I was saying in my stream earlier today, racism in the 80s was rife. It would have been in the 70s, but I was very young then, I wouldn't remember. But I remember the 80s. Racism was openly I was giving the example of Jim Davison. So I didn't even know Jim Davison was a racist for many years, because all I knew he was on the telly in the 80s, but I didn't ever watch his stuff. It was shit. But I watched Big Break because I was a snooker fan, right? And he was fine on Big Break. He hosted Big Break and he was absolutely fine. And you know why he was fine? Because at that time,
didn't talk politics
on mainstream telly, you didn't have the open racism, certainly not before the watershed. So attitudes had changed. And that was before Labour came into power. And I only found out he was a racist when I watched one of his stand-ups one time. And I thought, Christ, what's going on here? And so what I'm saying is you had this position where there was open racism on the telly in the 80s, mainstream, and and it was going away in the 90s. So in the 90s, you had this sweet spot where you had very socially liberal prime ministers, which included John Major as well, I suppose, but no great